The DV8 full-width front bumper that we have here will be one of the most affordable ways to bulletproof the front end of your 2004 to 2008 F150, while also adding a ton of functionality as well. Now the DV8 will combine high tensile strength steel along with 4 LED cube lights and a winch mount capable of supporting up to a 12,500-pound winch, all for right around $800. Now install is going to get a strong 2 out of 3 wrenches on the difficulty meter here due to the sheer size and weight of the bumper itself, but if you hang with me for a little bit, we'll show you how it's done later in the video. So the land of aftermarket bumpers can be a rather expensive one. However, DV8 is a company that tends to keep things rather affordable overall, as is the case with this 3-piece full-width bumper that we have here. Now, full disclosure guys, the site's gonna advertise this bumper as being, quote, elegant and streamlined, but I'm here to tell you, this thing resembles more of a reinforced steel clenched fist because there's really nothing streamlined about it. And I don't think that's a bad thing here, as protection is its obvious first priority with some functionality baked in. So what do you say we talk about it? But with that said, what do you say we start with protection first and foremost? And DV8 is going to use a combination of the 3/16" high tensile strength steel for, I'd say, majority of the build here, but they do reinforce certain key areas with 1/4-inch thick steel, namely your winch plate, D-ring mounts, things like that. Now that steel has been finished off in the 2-stage black powder coat, textured black powder coat I should say, to help prevent corrosion for one, but also to help keep that bumper looking good for many years to come. Now if you should run into any issues down the road, DV8 does offer a 3-year manufacturer's warranty against any possible defects. But protection aside, the DV8 is also packing a ton of functionality and inclusions as well, which for an entry-level price point is a very nice thing to point out. First up guys, they do include 4 3-inch cube lights to be used with the bumper in the pre-cut holes for you. Each cube light is packing 6 individual high-powered LEDs, so nice bump up in auxiliary lighting here that is included with the DV8. Now secondly, the bumper does include 2 high-strength steel D-rings to be used with your recovery points here, or D-ring mounts. And again, that's something that companies don't always toss in, but kudos to DV8 for including them again on an entry-level option. Now last but not least, the full-width option that we have here is winch compatible and can support up to a 12,500-pound winch of your choosing, as long as it utilizes a 10 by 4.5-inch mounting base, which, by the way, that weight capacity is pretty burly. Now I'm sure I don't have to tell you guys the importance of adding a winch to your rig from a recovery aspect or even utilitarian purposes, but you'll never appreciate it more, trust me, than the first time you or one of your buddies gets a little jammed up and needs a little help. Now that base plate again does feature that 1/4-inch thick steel plating, and it does have a cutout right up here guys, as you can see, for your winch line along with your fair lead, which by the way should accept pretty much any fair lead out there. But now we want to show you just what it takes to get this monster installed on your 2004 to 2008 F150 at home. And again, interesting note here with the construction. No, this bumper is not busted. This is how it comes. It's a 3-piece design. So you have your base portion here, which is going to be basically housing your winch, D-rings, things like that. And then you have your 2 caps here, which will house some of your lighting as well. I will say this multi-piece design definitely makes the install a little bit easier because you're losing a little bit of weight, but either way, it's still kind of a knuckle buster here, guys. But as promised, here's that detailed walkthrough with my buddy Joe to help you through the job.
For this install, I used a 1/4-inch drive cordless impact gun, 3/8 drive cordless impact gun, 3/8 drive cordless ratchet, 1/4-inch drive cordless ratchet, 10mm socket, 8mm socket, 10mm universal socket, 15mm socket, 18mm socket, 21mm socket, 18mm ratcheting wrench, 18mm box wrench, 10mm box wrench, electrical pliers, clip panel removal tool, a butane solder torch, pneumatic reciprocating body saw, and a dead blow hammer. Okay, so the first step of our removal process is going to be to pop the hood and remove the hood latch using a 10mm socket. With your hood latch out of the way, using a 10mm socket and an 8mm socket, you're going to remove your 5 bolts securing the fascia piece to the front end. Now, continuing to use our 10mm socket, we're going to remove the 3 10mm bolts that hold the headlights in to expose some hidden hardware for the fascia. All right, now with a little bit of pressure, just slide your headlight out. Now unclip your lights, and you can remove your headlight. Now with our hardware exposed, we can get the remaining bolts for the front fascia. Continuing with a 10mm socket, we're going to remove the 3 bolts on the inside of the fender here to get the front fascia off. So I know it's hard to see, but there's actually 3 bolts on the inside of this fender, 2 right here in the front that are pointed up. You can get them from behind the headlight, and 1 on the inside of the wheel arch right behind the fender flare. Now you can remove the 1 clip and the 2 nuts that hold the fender flare to the front fascia piece so that you can remove the front fascia from the vehicle. All right, finally using a 10mm socket, you can remove the 2 support brackets on either side. Now we can pop the front fascia off and start working on removing the front bumper. Now we can unhook our fog lights from the front bumper and start removing the nuts. With a 21mm socket, remove the 4 nuts that secure the front bumper to the frame. With the nuts removed, you can pull the front bumper off. If your truck is equipped with tow hooks, you're going to want to use a 15mm socket and remove the 4 bolts that hold the tow hooks to the frame rails. All right, so the first step now that we have our bumper up on the table is going to be to install the provided gasket in between the center section and the wing section that goes on later. All right, now using the supplied hardware from DV8, you can start assembling the wings to the center section of the bumper. With the wings loosely attached, I'm going to use an 18mm socket and wrench, and I'm just going to snug the bolts up just a little bit so that I can still adjust things later so that I can get everything lined up once it's on the vehicle. All right, now we're just going to repeat the process for the other side. As you can see, I've got an extra set of hands to just make things a little easier to hold things in place while I get everything bolted up. And once again, I'm just going to loosely tighten up these bolts so that I can leave some adjustment for later. All right, now we're going to move on to installing our fog lights supplied by DV8 into the front bumper. They give you all the hardware and Allen keys that you need to install these into the front bumper. I have mine on a small impact gun and a 10mm wrench to tighten up all the nuts and bolts. The next step is going to be to install our bumper brackets onto the bumper itself before we install the whole thing onto the frame rail. Once again, I'm going to loosely install my hardware so that I have adjustments when I put this thing onto the vehicle. All right, so in preparation for putting our bumper onto the vehicle, we're going to wire up the cube lights. There's a lot of different ways you can do this. I wired my two cube lights together, red to red, black to black, and I'm going to put a spade connector on the end of each wire. I'll then tie that into a harness that's on the vehicle so that I can switch them from inside the cab. As I mentioned before, there's a lot of different ways you can wire up these cube lights that come with the DV8 front bumper. Since our vehicle was equipped with fog lights originally, we're going to tap into the fog light harness and use the switch inside the cab to work the lights. So I'm going to cut the connector off and tap into my power and ground circuits and just add a small spade connector that I can hook into the cube lights that I added onto the back of the bumper. All right, so a little bit of clearancing is going to need to be done on your fender flare to mate up to the body line on the bumper. So what I'm going to do is trim the end of the fender flare off following the body line of the fender so that it matches up nicely with our DV8 bumper. All right, so this bumper's pretty heavy, so I got two of my friends here to help me get it up into place. Joe and I are going to get this up onto the frame rails, and Adam's going to get the bolts started at the bottom. All right, so as I mentioned before, I left all my bolts loose to make my adjustments here at the end after I put the bumper on the vehicle. I've got my buddy Adam over here to hold the corner of the bumper up into place while I tighten up my bolts underneath. So now using an 18mm socket and wrench, I'm going to tighten up all my wing bolts to get the bumper fully secured. All right, and now I can make my electrical connections for my cube lights in the bumper. All right, and now I'm going to use the provided bolt to bolt down the hood release bracket to the DV8 bumper. Now we've got our bumper secured in place and adjusted the way we need it to. We can start putting our headlights back in to wrap this thing up. And that's going to wrap up my install for the DV8 full width off-road front bumper for your 04 to 08 F-150. For all things F-150, keep it right here at AmericanTrucks.com.